Are you thinking about relocating to Naperville, Illinois, and you're wondering what are the negatives about moving to Naperville, Illinois? Well, today I've got you covered. I'm going to give you my top 5 reasons to maybe avoid or not move to Naperville if you can't handle these top complaints that people have about Naperville. I'm Amy Pearson. I'm a local realtor. I serve Naperville, Western Suburbs, as well as downtown Chicago. I do weekly videos on real estate info, community information. If you like my video, hit the subscribe button. I've worked with people who've been relocating from Chicago as well as other states, and I've been helping them out. If you are planning to move to the Naperville area, feel free to reach out to me. Info is below. Love to help you out. All right, so I've got my top 5 complaints about living in Naperville. And so I did some research, actually found this on Reddit online, top 5 complaints of people about living in Naperville, and I'm going to respond to the complaints, and we'll see what they are. Okay, so the first complaint that I found on Reddit about people about moving to Naperville would be no parking at the train stations, which I will somewhat agree with this. Traditionally, the Naperville train station located in downtown Naperville has been very hard to get a parking spot. I've even heard it's taking years to get a parking spot. I drive by a lot there. Parking spaces look wide open. There are daily parking options. I do think you have to get there early to get a daily parking option. Again, things are different because of COVID. People are working from home a lot more than they used to. There also is the Pace bus that you can take from your home to get to the train station. But there is another train station in Naperville, Route 59, and there is no wait for a parking spot at the Route 59 train station. So if you can't get a monthly pass at the downtown Naperville train station, check out Route 59 monthly parking pass option. All right, so my second complaint that I found, okay, people complain about, I guess gripe or complaint that I found on was the horrible traffic. It all depends on where you're moving from, to be honest. If you're used to a large city, you'll think it's a breeze moving to Naperville. Like, oh, this is lovely. But if you're not used to, traffic through stoplights, it might be a bit more traffic-y to you. I will say there are certain times of the day to maybe avoid certain areas. I would not go past the high schools in the afternoon. It's a lot of cars coming and going because a lot of high school kids can drive. Also morning, evening, and lunchtime driving through downtown Naperville, yeah, it gets a little congested and clogged. Another street that's quite known for the infamous traffic would be Route 59 is another street that gets a lot of traffic. So if you just know how to avoid the certain areas, it gets a little bit more congested during certain times. It's not as bad as Chicago traffic. So it just depends on what time of the day you're driving around town. So some would agree, but sometimes it's more trafficy than others in Naperville. So I don't know if I totally agree with the having horrible traffic. All right, number 3 complaint about living in Naperville, this is according to reddit.com, would be too expensive, which I do have a video if you want to check out my library on cost of living in Naperville versus Chicago. It is actually more affordable to live in Naperville versus Chicago. Many of the costs are lower than Chicago. I believe daycare is lower. Just certain things are much lower than living in the city of Chicago. But there are, I will say, average price home. It is around $600,000 for average sale home. That's right now is happening in Naperville. So home prices are going up. So I can say it's why people are saying it's expensive to live in Naperville. But if you look up the cost of living, it's pretty relative, and it is actually cheaper than living in downtown Chicago. So check out that video that I made on cost of living in Naperville. Oh, is Naperville too expensive? It's called. So check that video out. I made it somewhat recently. All right, my next one, number 4 complaint about living in Naperville would be not walkable. I'm gonna somewhat agree with this complaint. So if you live in Naperville, you need to have a car. It's really hard to get around if you don't have a car. There is a Pace bus system. It's kind of like the public bus system in Naperville. It does go throughout the town. My daughter calls it the blue buses. So there is a bus system for transportation. I don't know how often they drive around, but they are pretty frequent, and they do drop off and pick up at the train stations as well. If you live closer to the downtown area, you could maybe go without having a car because it's pretty walkable if you're close to downtown Naperville. I personally still have one car, and we have an electric scooter for my husband to get to the train station. So it's just whatever's comfortable with you, but you definitely need at least one car to get around because we are in suburban life, and most places you do have to drive to, unfortunately. So I kind of agree with not being walkable complaint in Naperville. All right, so the number 5 complaint that people complain about Naperville would be the commute to the highway, which I somewhat agree, but it depends where you live in Naperville. Naperville is a very large town. It is almost 150,000 people. So the north side versus south side are very far apart from each other. So I think it's mostly people who are living in South Naperville have this complaint that it can take a very long time for them to get to I-88 onto the highway. I've heard as much as 35 minutes to get to I-88 because they gotta do the infamous Route 59, which is quite trafficy. So if you're living on further the north side of Naperville, you're closer to the highways, you're closer to downtown Naperville, you wouldn't have this complaint. So it just depends. It's all relative as to where you're located in Naperville if you have the complaint that it takes too long to commute to get to the highway. So those are the top 5, I guess, complaints. If you can handle those complaints, which I think they're not too bad, you would love living in Naperville. So if you're thinking about moving to Naperville, feel free to reach out to me. I got my info below. I'd love to help you out on your home search in Naperville.